There is a strange illusion that dominates modern life. Most people believe power comes from visibility. They believe the more they are seen, the more influence they possess. They believe success is measured by attention, recognition, applause, and constant activity. Every day they announce their plans before they have taken a single meaningful step. They share their ambitions before they have built the discipline required to achieve them. They seek validation from strangers while neglecting the quiet work that would make validation irrelevant. Yet history tells a very different story. The most powerful transformations rarely happen in public. The strongest oak tree grows in silence. The deepest rivers flow beneath the surface. Even nature itself hides its greatest processes from the eyes of the crowd. Seeds develop underground long before they break through the earth. Mountains are formed over centuries without witnesses. Real strength does not demand observation. It develops whether anyone is watching or not. The Stoics understood this truth with remarkable clarity. They recognized that a person becomes powerful not when everyone knows their name, but when they gain mastery over themselves. They understood that external attention is unstable, unpredictable, and often dangerous. The opinions of others rise and fall like changing weather. Praise today becomes criticism tomorrow. Admiration turns into envy. Approval becomes expectation. A person who builds their identity upon public recognition places their peace in the hands of people they cannot control. This is why the art of disappearing is not an act of weakness. It is not avoidance. It is not surrender. It is a deliberate strategy. It is the conscious decision to withdraw your energy from distractions and reinvest it into your own development. It is choosing substance over appearance. It is refusing to perform for an audience while building a character that requires no audience at all. Consider how much energy is lost through constant exposure. Every time you explain yourself to people who are committed to misunderstanding you, you lose energy. Every time you seek approval before taking action, you lose momentum. Every time you react emotionally to criticism, gossip, or judgment, you surrender a portion of your attention to forces outside your control. The Stoic philosopher and Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius governed one of the most powerful empires in human history. Yet when we read his private reflections, we discover something surprising. He was not obsessed with managing public opinion. He was obsessed with managing himself. Again and again, he reminded himself that other people's judgments were beyond his control. Their praise could not improve his character. Their criticism could not diminish his virtue unless he allowed it. This insight forms the foundation of genuine power. Most people spend their lives trying to control what cannot be controlled. They attempt to manage how others perceive them. They worry endlessly about reputation, social status, and public image. They become exhausted because they are fighting a battle that can never be won. Human opinion is unstable by nature. No amount of effort can guarantee universal approval. The Stoics called this the dichotomy of control. Some things belong to us, and some things do not. Our actions belong to us. Our choices belong to us. Our values belong to us. But the opinions, reactions, and judgments of others never belong to us. The moment you truly understand this distinction, a remarkable freedom emerges. You stop chasing approval. You stop defending every accusation. You stop explaining every decision. You stop performing for an audience that was never going to understand your journey anyway. And as you stop wasting energy externally, something extraordinary begins to happen internally. You become stronger. The world teaches people to seek attention. Stoicism teaches people to seek mastery. These are not the same thing. Attention can be gained overnight. Mastery may take years. Attention often attracts envy. Mastery attracts results. Attention depends upon other people. Mastery depends upon yourself. One of the greatest mistakes ambitious individuals make is revealing their plans too early. They mistake talking for doing. They experience a temporary sense of accomplishment simply by announcing their intentions. The brain receives a small reward from social recognition before any real work has been completed. As a result, many dreams die before they are ever pursued. The individual tells everyone about the business they intend to build. They announce the transformation they are going to achieve. They explain the goals they will reach. They receive encouragement, compliments, and admiration. Yet weeks later, nothing has changed. The Stoics would have recognized the danger immediately. Words create the illusion of progress. Action creates actual progress. There is immense power in silence because silence protects momentum. When your goals remain private, they are free from unnecessary scrutiny. They are protected from the doubts of others. They are insulated from premature validation. Instead of spending energy talking about what you will do, you invest that energy into doing it. Notice how often powerful individuals disappear during periods of growth. They become less available, less reactive, less concerned with being seen. While others compete for attention, they focus on preparation. Then one day they return transformed. People often mistake this transformation for luck. They see the visible result, but not the invisible years that created it. What appears sudden is usually the product of prolonged solitude. What appears effortless is usually the result of relentless discipline. What appears extraordinary is often the outcome of ordinary actions repeated consistently over long periods of time. The crowd rarely understands this because the crowd is addicted to immediate gratification. Human beings naturally seek comfort. We seek pleasure. We seek validation. We seek distractions that provide short-term satisfaction. Modern society amplifies these tendencies. Endless entertainment is available at every moment. Constant stimulation competes for our attention. Every notification invites us to abandon our focus. The challenge is not external technology. The challenge is internal weakness. The Stoics understood that freedom requires discipline. Without discipline, we become servants of impulse. We react instead of choosing. We consume instead of creating. We follow distractions instead of pursuing purpose. Disappearing from unnecessary noise is therefore an act of self-defense. It is the protection of your most valuable resource. Attention. Every meaningful achievement requires concentrated effort. Great works are not produced through fragmented focus. Character is not built through constant distraction. Excellence emerges when attention is directed toward a worthy objective for a sustained period of time. This is why periods of isolation have played such an important role throughout history. Many of the world's greatest thinkers, leaders, artists, and innovators experienced seasons of withdrawal. They stepped away from the crowd not because they hated people, but because they understood the necessity of uninterrupted reflection. Solitude allows you to hear your own thoughts. Without solitude, your mind becomes crowded with external voices. Society tells you what success should look like. Friends tell you what they think you should do. Critics tell you why you will fail. Strangers offer opinions about a life they barely understand. Eventually you lose contact with yourself. The Stoics sought silence because silence restores clarity. In silence, you discover whether your goals are truly yours. In silence, you confront your fears. In silence, excuses become impossible to ignore. In silence, you encounter the person you have been avoiding. This encounter is often uncomfortable. Many people fear solitude because solitude removes distractions. It forces them to face unresolved insecurities, weaknesses, and contradictions. The noise of the world acts as a shield against self-examination, but growth begins where distraction ends. The person who learns to sit alone with their thoughts gains access to a level of self-awareness that most people never Experience, and self-awareness is the beginning of self-mastery. Another reason disappearing creates power is that it develops emotional independence. Most people are emotionally dependent on external reactions. Their mood rises when they receive praise. Their confidence falls when they receive criticism. Their self-worth fluctuates according to circumstances beyond their control. This is a fragile way to live. Imagine placing your happiness in the hands of thousands of unpredictable people. Imagine allowing strangers to determine whether you feel valuable or worthless. Imagine surrendering your inner peace to the changing opinions of the crowd. Yet, this is exactly what many people do. The Stoics rejected this entirely. For them, character was the only reliable source of self-respect. If you acted with integrity, you succeeded. If you fulfilled your responsibilities, you succeeded. If you remained faithful to your principles, you succeeded. The judgment of others became secondary. This perspective creates enormous resilience. When criticism arrives, you examine it calmly. If it contains truth, you learn from it. If it contains falsehood, you dismiss it. Either way, your peace remains intact. You are no longer controlled by praise. You are no longer wounded by condemnation. You become anchored within yourself. This is one of the hidden rewards of disappearing. You stop measuring your value through visibility. You stop equating attention with importance. You stop needing constant reassurance. Instead, you begin building a life that derives strength from internal foundations. The philosopher Epictetus taught that no person is free who is not master of themselves. These words remain profoundly relevant today. Many people appear free because they can go where they want, buy what they want, and say what they want. Yet internally they remain enslaved by fear, approval-seeking, insecurity, and impulse. True freedom is different. True freedom means remaining steady when others panic. True freedom means staying focused when others become distracted. True freedom means pursuing what is right regardless of whether anyone notices. The art of disappearing cultivates this freedom because it gradually shifts your center of gravity inward. You become less concerned with appearance and more concerned with substance, less concerned with recognition and more concerned with competence, less concerned with being admired and more concerned with becoming admirable. And this transformation changes everything. Because eventually, life presents every person with obstacles they did not choose. Failure arrives. Rejection appears. Opportunities disappear. Plans collapse. People betray expectations. At that moment, external validation becomes useless. Only character remains. Only discipline remains. Only the strength developed in silence remains. The Stoics viewed adversity not as an enemy, but as raw material. Every setback contained an opportunity for growth. Every challenge offered a chance to strengthen virtue. Every obstacle became a training ground for resilience. The person who has spent years cultivating inner strength during periods of solitude is uniquely prepared for these moments. While others break, they adapt. While others complain, they act. While others panic, they remain composed because they understand a truth that few people ever fully learn. The obstacle is not merely something standing in the way. Often, the obstacle becomes the way itself. Most people never discover this truth because they spend their lives running from difficulty. They believe power comes from avoiding discomfort. They believe peace comes from eliminating challenges. They believe happiness is found in constructing a life where nothing difficult ever happens. But reality does not cooperate with these wishes. Life remains unpredictable. Circumstances change without warning. Fortune rises and falls. Health can disappear. Relationships can end. Careers can collapse. Entire futures can be altered by events beyond our control. The Stoics never promised protection from these realities. Instead, they offered something far more valuable, preparation. They taught that a strong mind can endure what a weak mind cannot. They understood that adversity is inevitable, but suffering often comes from resistance. We suffer not only because events occur, but because we demand that reality conform to our preferences. The individual who practices the art of disappearing begins to understand this at a profound level. During periods of solitude, they learn to separate themselves from constant emotional stimulation. They become familiar with discomfort. They stop requiring life to feel pleasant every moment of every day. As a result, they develop a remarkable advantage. They become difficult to disturb. This does not mean they become cold, emotionless, or indifferent to human experience. It means they stop being controlled by every emotional impulse that arises within them. They learn to observe emotions without obeying them. They learn to experience disappointment without surrendering to despair. They learn to experience success without becoming arrogant. This emotional stability is one of the rarest forms of power in existence. Look carefully at the world around you. People lose control of themselves because of comments on the internet. People destroy opportunities because they cannot tolerate temporary discomfort. People abandon meaningful goals because progress takes longer than expected. People become prisoners of emotional reactions that last only minutes, but create consequences that endure for years. The Stoics recognize that strength is not measured by how loudly a person reacts. Strength is measured by how effectively a person governs themselves. And self-government requires distance. Distance from noise. Distance from unnecessary conflict. Distance from the endless cycle of reaction and counter-reaction that consumes so many lives. When you disappear for a season, something extraordinary happens. You begin to see clearly who genuinely belongs in your life. Many relationships survive only because of constant access. Some people remain connected to you, not because they value you, but because they benefit from your availability. They expect immediate responses. They expect constant attention. They expect unlimited access to your time and energy. The moment you become less available, reality reveals itself. Some relationships strengthen because they are built on genuine respect. Others quietly fade because they were built on convenience. This revelation is not a loss. It is clarity. The Stoics valued clarity above comfort because clarity allows wise decisions. A painful truth is often more valuable than a pleasant illusion. When you disappear long enough to observe people's actions rather than their words, you begin to understand their true priorities. You also begin to understand your own. Many people discover during periods of solitude that they have been pursuing goals they never actually wanted. They chased status because others admired it. They pursued careers because society rewarded them. They adopted ambitions that reflected external expectations rather than internal convictions. This creates a dangerous form of success. A person achieves everything they thought they wanted only to discover they remain empty. Why? Because achievement cannot satisfy a desire that was never authentically theirs. The Stoics constantly emphasized the importance of examining one's life. They believed an unexamined existence leaves a person vulnerable to manipulation by external influences. Without reflection, society decides your values. Without reflection, trends determine your priorities. Without reflection, you become a passenger rather than the author of your own life. The art of disappearing creates the conditions necessary for this examination. When the noise fades, truth becomes audible. You begin asking deeper questions. What am I actually building? Why am I pursuing this goal? What kind of person am I becoming through these actions? Would I still choose this path if nobody ever praised me for it? These questions separate genuine purpose from borrowed ambition, and purpose is a source of tremendous power. A person motivated by approval eventually quits when approval disappears. A person motivated by purpose continues. Regardless. This distinction explains why some individuals endure extraordinary hardship while others abandon their pursuits at the first sign of resistance. Purpose creates endurance. Purpose creates patience. Purpose creates resilience. The Stoics admired endurance because they understood that greatness rarely emerges from intensity alone. Greatness emerges from consistency. Anyone can be motivated for a day. Anyone can feel inspired for a week. Very few people can remain committed for years. This is where radical self-discipline enters the picture. Discipline is often misunderstood. Many imagine discipline as punishment, deprivation, or rigid self-denial. But the Stoics viewed discipline differently. To them, discipline was liberation. Every time you refuse an unhealthy impulse, you become more free. Every time you resist distraction, you become more powerful. Every time you choose long-term growth over short-term pleasure, you strengthen your capacity for self-command. The person who disappears and commits themselves to disciplined growth undergoes a gradual transformation. At first, the change is invisible. No applause follows. No recognition arrives. No crowd gathers to celebrate. There are only ordinary days filled with repeated effort. Yet this is precisely where most transformations occur. A single workout changes little. Hundreds of workouts reshape a body. A single day of focus changes little. Years of focus reshape a destiny. A single act of courage changes little. Repeated courage reshapes a character. The crowd often overlooks this because gradual improvement lacks drama. Human beings are naturally attracted to sudden success stories. They want dramatic breakthroughs and overnight transformations. Reality operates differently. The most impressive achievements are usually built through invisible repetitions accumulated over long periods of time. This is why disappearing can feel uncomfortable. You stop receiving immediate feedback. You stop collecting quick rewards. You stop feeding the ego through external validation. Instead, you invest in a future that has not yet arrived. The ego dislikes this arrangement. Ego wants recognition now. The ego wants attention now. The ego wants proof now. But wisdom understands that meaningful results often require delayed gratification. The Stoics repeatedly warned against becoming servants of immediate desires. They knew that short-term pleasure frequently undermines long-term fulfillment. They understood that the strongest individuals are not those who obtain everything they want immediately. The strongest individuals are those who can wait. Waiting requires faith. Not blind faith in luck or destiny. Faith in the process. Faith that disciplined effort eventually compounds. Faith that character built in obscurity eventually manifests in visible ways. Faith that growth occurring beneath the surface is still growth. Think about the archer preparing for competition. Hours are spent refining technique. Thousands of arrows are released. Mistakes are corrected repeatedly. No audience watches most of this process. The performance everyone admires is only the final expression of years of invisible preparation. Life functions similarly. People notice outcomes. They rarely notice preparation. They notice victories. They rarely notice sacrifices. They notice confidence. They rarely notice the countless moments of doubt that had to be overcome. The art of disappearing allows you to focus on preparation rather than performance. And preparation creates confidence that performance alone can never provide. There is another reason disappearance creates power. It protects you from the dangerous influence of comparison. Comparison has as become one of the defining psychological struggles of modern life. People constantly measure themselves against others. They compare achievements, appearances, wealth, status, relationships, and lifestyles. The result is endless dissatisfaction. No matter how much they possess, someone else appears to possess more. No matter how much progress they make, someone else appears further ahead. Comparison transforms gratitude into resentment and progress into inadequacy. The Stoics rejected this entirely. They understood that every individual walks a unique path, shaped by circumstances, opportunities, strengths, and challenges that cannot be perfectly compared. The only meaningful comparison is between who you are today and who you were yesterday. When you disappear from unnecessary noise, you reduce exposure to the endless temptation of comparison. Your attention returns to your own journey. Your focus shifts toward personal growth rather than external competition. This creates peace, and peace creates effectiveness. A distracted mind rarely performs at its highest level. An envious mind rarely appreciates its blessings. A restless mind rarely sustains focus, but a disciplined, purposeful, and self-directed mind becomes extraordinarily effective. This is the paradox many people fail to understand. The individual who seeks power directly often never finds it. The individual who pursues character, discipline, wisdom, and self-mastery frequently acquires power as a byproduct, not because they chased influence, but because influence naturally follows competence. Not because they demanded respect, but because respect naturally follows integrity. Not because they sought attention, but because attention often follows excellence. The Stoics would remind us that these outcomes remain secondary. External rewards are welcome when they arrive, but they are never the objective. The objective is always the cultivation of virtue, to live courageously, to act wisely, to remain disciplined, to maintain integrity, to fulfill one's responsibilities regardless of recognition. This is where genuine power resides, not in being known, not in being admired, not in being followed, but in becoming the person who remains steady when circumstances become chaotic, the kind of person who continues when motivation disappears, the kind of person who acts according to principle rather than emotion, the kind of person whose confidence comes from evidence, accumulated through disciplined living. And perhaps this is the deepest lesson hidden within the art of disappearing. You do not disappear to escape the world. You disappear to prepare yourself for it. You withdraw from noise so that you can hear truth. You step away from distraction so that you can cultivate focus. You detach from approval so that you can develop independence. You embrace solitude so that you can strengthen character. And when the time comes to return, you do not return seeking validation. You return transformed, calmer than before, stronger than before, more disciplined than before, more difficult to provoke, more difficult to manipulate, more difficult to discourage. You return possessing something that cannot be purchased, borrowed, inherited, or granted by another human being. You return possessing yourself, and once a person possesses themselves, the world loses much of its power to control them. That is why the Stoics never feared obscurity. They never feared silence. They never feared solitude. They understood that some of the most important battles are fought far away from public attention, in quiet rooms, in lonely mornings, in difficult choices nobody else will ever see. Because real power is not built in the spotlight. Real power is built in the shadows, revealed through action and sustained through character. And the person who learns this secret discovers that disappearing was never about becoming less. It was about becoming more.